Ken, what happened to the trial? Why is it not on the schedule any longer in D.C.?
Well, it's sort of bowing to the reality that this case has been on hold while we wait for the D.C. appeals court to rule on whether Mr. Trump is the subject to any level of presidential immunity against the charges in this case. And since it's widely assumed that the appeals court will rule against the former president on that score, the next stop would be the Supreme Court, and that's a process that could take several months. So the March 4th date that Judge Tanya Chutkan set to begin this case is no longer possible, and they're now acknowledging that. And that means that the first of Trump's 4 criminal trials may well be held this spring in Manhattan on those New York State charges of business fraud in connection with hush money payments during the 2016 election. That trial was set for March 25th, but the judge had made clear he would defer to the federal election case, which is not happening anymore right now. So he's scheduled a hearing on February 15th to decide if that date still works. And of course, the other the other federal case against Mr. Trump, the one in Florida involving classified documents and obstruction of justice, is theoretically scheduled to start in May, Katie, but nobody thinks that's going to happen. The judge in that case has resisted every attempt by special counsel Jack Smith to speed that case along. And then obviously you have the Atlanta racketeering case, which has always been expected to take the longest to get to trial because of the large number of defendants. So that is the array of things that are happening right now.
Let me ask you about the appeals court, which is considering Donald Trump's immunity. They've been considering it now for many weeks. Do we have any indication on timing, any past examples that we can point to say this is how long it should take?
No, well, the only thing we can look to is we're right about the period of time that it took them to get the ruling on the gag order. Remember the Trump gag order that was appealed to that court? It took about this long. So really, we expect it any day now. This is a more significant, more weighty legal issue than that one, which was pretty cut and dried. And so it stands to reason. And these judges know that every word of their opinions are going to be scrutinized. And so they may be taking some extra time. But we're not in any kind of a sort of eyebrow-raising territory in terms of the length of time they are taking to consider this case.
All right, Tom, let's talk about Allen Weisselberg and the New York City fraud case. Why would he be coming to why is he involved in this again? What's going on with him perjuring himself?
Sure. So this is kind of its own separate matter. And as you know, we've talked about a number of times, Allen Weisselberg pleaded guilty in connection with the tax scheme involving the Trump Organization. He testified at the Trump Organization trial. So we know all that. This stems from the civil trial involving Donald Trump that was brought by New York's Attorney General in testimony that Weisselberg gave at that trial, which some have flagged as potentially not accurate or potentially actually lying on the witness stand. And it's that particular issue that is led to the New York Times reporting, with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office declining to comment. But basically what they're focusing on here are those statements in whether or not Allen Weisselberg will in fact plead guilty to lying in front of the judge, who was the jury in that particular case. The question here is whether or not Allen Weisselberg could potentially testify against the former president, something he steadfastly refused to do, actually went to jail. He probably would not have had to go to jail if he had decided to cooperate. There's no indication in the New York Times' reporting. I have no indication whatsoever that Allen Weisselberg is at all considering cooperating in any ongoing investigation or at the upcoming trial of Donald Trump that Ken referenced, which I think a lot of people thought was going to be the trial that got pushed back, and now, in fact, maybe the trial that we have first. Folks have pointed to a 4 to 5 week trial there. I don't see that. I think it's going to be a much shorter trial. We already know a lot of the fact pattern. It's also not clear that Allen Weisselberg's testimony would really be helpful or even relevant or admissible in that particular case, because it centers more on those hush money payments, which involves the National Enquirer, Donald Trump, and Michael Cohen, and those are your kind of key players.
Does it send a signal, though, to do a plea deal on perjury?
I think 100%, and I wonder if that's what Alvin Bragg is really thinking here. In other words, you lie in our courts, you're going to, we're going to pull the leash on you, and we're going to make sure that if folks have an idea that they want to lie in future cases involving the president, including the upcoming criminal trial, that there might be ramifications for that. So I think that that's something that certainly could be a consideration for the DA's office.
So, Suzanne, part of this, the way that this case is described, is Donald Trump paying off a porn star. But Alvin Bragg is trying to recenter it. He's trying to say this is more than just paying somebody off. This is paying somebody off at a critical time. And he's trying to say that because he did so in the lead up to the 2016 election, that this is election interference. Can you help walk me through that?
Right. It's cinematic the way you say it. You know, in the final days of the election campaign in 2006, he allegedly made a payment to Stormy Daniels, a porn star, for her silence, and that's sort of where that's kind of the crux of it. It can go from anywhere from a misdemeanor to a fraud charge, depending if he can link another crime to it. But you've hit the heart of it, and he's looking at either, it either can come out in a misdemeanor, or he could, either kind of go from probation to doing actual time for it, depending where the jury lands on it.
Why would it be considered election interference to ask somebody not to talk about an alleged relationship?
I think largely because of the timing of it. It happened right before the election, and it was done with the intent, allegedly to sway the election. So I think that's where it comes down.
All right, Lisa, let's talk about the other case, the Fulton County case. And this is DA Fani Willis, who's admitted to a personal relationship, which is, being very specific in her language. Why would her personal relationship with one of her special prosecutors potentially imperil the entire case, the entire RICO case against Donald Trump and all of his co-defendants for trying to overturn or meddle in the Georgia election in 2020?
Well, let's start with why would that happen, and then I'll explain to you why I think it shouldn't. There's some case law in Georgia that says where a district attorney has a conflict of interest, it's not acceptable just to recuse that person, but the entire office has to be removed from the prosecution because their authority is entirely derivative of his or her authority. Now, do I think Fani Willis has a conflict of interest here that reaches to that level? I don't, Katie. I think the optics here are absolutely terrible. For example, Nathan Wade was appointed within a day of his divorce filing. But according to this, Fani Willis is saying, there was a personal relationship between me and Mr. Wade. It did not start until well after he was appointed. And all of the other factors that they point to, including the manner in which he was compensated, the amount he was compensated, and even the manner and timing of his appointment, none of those are legally awry.
So she's saying it wasn't an affair while he was married, not that that is exactly matters relevant to this case, but that it's also not the reason that she hired him. It's not he didn't get this job because she was in a relationship with him.
No, and in fact, there are copious exhibits accompanying this brief, and included among them are numerous awards that Nathan Wade has won for his advocacy as a lawyer and his service as a municipal court judge.
Does he have experience in this particular kind of prosecution?
They don't point to it if he does. Nathan Wade is not a RICO specialist. Fani Willis, in fact, has two other special prosecutors who do have that experience. She says she appointed him because she trusted him. He was an experienced former prosecutor who also had defense side experience and had been a judge. She trusted him as sort of the quarterback of her legal team, not the person most responsible and charged with RICO knowledge.
What about the allegation that this money that he was making was used to go on vacations that he paid for with her, even if their relationship started after she hired him? Does that pose a potential problem?
I don't think so, particularly given the facts that she's alleging here. Again, on their motion, Mike Roman's lawyers, Mike Roman is one of Donald Trump's co-defendants, said he paid for all of these things. She is now saying, well, wait a second. Actually, we divided expenses for personal travel roughly evenly between us. Here, we're going to attach some of the bills that I paid when we went places together. Neither one of us is dependent financially on the other. The hourly rate that we paid him was commensurate with what other special prosecutors are paid, and the totality of what we paid him was reasonable given that he quarterbacked this entire prosecution from the time I started it in early 2022 on forward.